heart that hurts. I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life mending broken people. Hello friends, welcome to 3ABN Today. My name is John Lowe, but you probably know that if you're part of the 3ABN family. But if you're not, welcome to this wonderful network that God has ordained and brought into existence. And to my immediate left is Jason Bradley. Good to have you here, Jason.
It's good to be here on the 3ABN Today set.
That's right.
This is the first 3ABN Today that I'm co-hosting.
That's right. You're usually on Dare to Dream Network.
That's right.
Well, good to have you here today.
Good to be here.
And we have an exciting program for you. You may be wondering where your life is headed and what the Lord has in store for you. Well, this program will encourage you as you're trying to plan your future. You might know that the Lord also has a plan for you, and it'll work out beautifully if you simply put your life in His hand. But before we go any further, I want to thank you for your prayers and your financial support of this network as we continue going and growing, getting ready for Jesus to come. And if you're watching, maybe from your phone, if you're not watching from your phone, you might want to go ahead and get that 3ABN app. Know that app?
Oh yeah, the free 3ABN app.
That's
Make
right.
sure you download that.
That's right. From your Android or from your Apple device, you can go to the Play Store or to the Apple Store and download 3ABN app, and you can watch 3ABN anywhere. That's the miracle of modern technology. But before we go into our program, we always have music, and Sandra Intaman, who's not a stranger to 3ABN, is going to bless us with a song entitled Remember Me.
Remember me in a Bible cracked and faded by the years. Remember me in a sanctuary filled with silent prayer. And age to age and heart to heart, bound by grace and peace. Child of wonder, child of God, I've remembered you. Remember me. Remember me when the color of a sunset fills the sky. Remember me when you pray and tears of joy fall from your eyes. And age to age and heart to heart, bound by grace and peace. Child of wonder, child of God, I've remembered you. Remember me. Remember me when the children leave their Sabbath school with smiles. Remember me child of God. I remember you. Remember me. Age to age and heart to heart. Child of wonder, child of God. Remember me. Age to age and heart to heart. Child of wonder, child of God. Remember me.
Thank you so much. Isn't that a wonderful song?
Absolutely. She has such a beautiful voice.
I know, very easy to listen to. And then the trio, first time I've heard it that way. Well, it's time to meet our guest today, and I know him very well. He's a colleague of mine here in the Illinois Conference. Pastor Lowe, so good to have you here today.
Blessed to be here.
Yes.
Blessed to be here.
Another, oh, you guys are stretching across the gulf here.
Yeah.
Another brother in ministry.
Yeah.
And those who are listening, maybe on radio and watching on television, first of all, tell us where you're from and what you do right now. Kind of just a synopsis of your present. I think I gave it away a moment ago, but just kind of let us know.
Right. I'm currently employed with the Illinois Conference. I pastor a 4-church district in the central Chicago area.
Okay.
And been there, this is my 10th year, actually.
In Illinois?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good to have you. Well, we'll see you at workers' meeting.
Yeah.
Especially the January one.
Yeah.
Do you come to, I think, sometime Camp Akita?
Oh, awesome, awesome. And always have fun.
Good to have
you. And your drone and your high technology.
Sure.
Yeah, he's got all the gadgets. That's
Amazing,
for sure.
amazing, just amazing.
I'm a gadgetarian too. I must admit
Gadgetarian,
that.
I like
But
that.
today we're going to peek into your life. Now, I'm looking at our outline here, and I'm really excited. There's certain things that I had forgotten. But to take us back to your earlier days, because you have a ministry now we'll talk about in just a few moments. But take us back to the beginning, because everyone has a beginning, not just being born, but where were you raised? And tell us about some of your family background.
Sure. I was born in Ghana, South America, and left South America 76, 77, migrated to New York. I always joke about it, from the tropical jungle to the concrete jungle. Smack in the middle of Brooklyn in a blizzard. Knew nothing about city life, knew nothing about urban life. Myself, my sister, and my mom. Mom was working 4 jobs to make ends meet. She was studying at the same time. And there we are in the East Flatbush area. And you know, you have that waiting period before you start school to get all the paperwork in place. So for maybe a month and a half, I'm just sitting at the window looking out, you know, at all of this madness, I call it, you know, the culture shock of East Flatbush, Brooklyn. And in that month and a half time, I'm trying to figure out, as a kid at 10 years old, you know, how am I going to cope with what I'm seeing out there? Because what I'm seeing each day was terrifying me. The junior high school was just across the street from our building, project, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I was seeing stuff daily, you know, I was seeing violence daily, and just trying to further the mental strength to be able to get there and deal with that.
And back in 1976, knowing what the city was like at that time, because I was living in New York City, I was just graduating from high school at that time, and I know the city was rough. I mean, those are the days of the crack bottles and the vials on the ground, and a lot of drugs and a lot of violence in New York. It's quite a different place now.
Absolutely.
Praise the Lord for that. It's kind of one of the fastest, trendiest places. Brooklyn is becoming the upscale place in the United States.
Yes.
And Jason, you lived in Brooklyn too, didn't you?
I lived in Manhattan, but I've been to Brooklyn.
Okay.
And Brooklyn it looks amazing now.
Yeah.
I've seen it back, well, not back in '76, but a little bit later on, and I've seen it recently.
The before and the after. So here you are waiting to go to junior high school or to start school. How did that turn out?
Well, started with PS26, I think that would be elementary. I started in the 5th grade.
Okay.
Started in 5th grade. And first few years is quite an adjustment. My grandma was a Adventist lay preacher. So I knew Adventism. You know, my grandma took me and was raising me from I was about a year and a half or 2 years old. My mom migrated to the U.S. That was about 69 or thereabouts, 68, 69. So I was raised by my grandma. Strong, conservative, fundamental Adventist lay preacher, and a strong person, a matriarch, a queen mother, you know, we say. A lot of strong Afrocentric values. And so there's a lot that she instilled, but there's a lot even within that nurture that I would later struggle with, as far as knowing and understanding God for who he is in character, and not just being obedient, and not just being afraid, and not just desiring salvation so I don't get burned up, you know, this kind of stuff. So I get into junior high school, get into elementary school, and that's a kind of an adjustment period. I'm a good kid, shy, strong values and principles. I'm still walking down the streets of Brooklyn saying good morning to people, you know, because that's what I did in Ghana, in South America. You know, we were raised with that kind of Southern courtesy. Right. And hello, sir, good morning, ma'am. Everybody say, what? Do I know you? You know, but I did that for a while until I learned to adjust. And through all of that, observing a lot of victimization, you know, observing kids getting beat up, observing, you know, you're just out for lunch, you're walking, going somewhere, and a group of guys, you know, grab you, take your money, your lunch money, whatever it is. Yeah, this kind of stuff, and later on, you know, material things. They take your coat, they take your hat, they take your sneakers, you know, this type of stuff. And so by the time I got to junior high school, I'm trying to figure ways to cope through that. And I'm realizing that it's kind of like it's a survival game. And it's a kill or be killed kind of game. I have no brothers, I have no cousins. My dad, I met my dad at about age 15 at that time. So that nurture was absent at that time. And so I figured, listen, I got to fight. You know, I have to learn to fight.
Learn to defend yourself.
Yeah, I have to learn to defend myself. I have to learn to cope. But it wasn't just a physical fight, because I'm a small person, and I was even smaller then. So it had to be a mental fight. It had to be a mental game. So I had to figure out how to deal with this culture, how to engage it, be part of it, yet not be part of it. You know, that kind of stuff. And then my whole experience is of reaching to a point where I attained some success in at least learning the survival game. So I'm now streetwise. But then once I'm there and I'm at a secure place, I start to get sucked in to the other side, which I never really intended to go. So
if I'm hearing you correctly, you're learning how to walk differently, stop saying good morning, ma'am, good morning, sir. Gotta have that tough exterior, at least look tougher.
Yes.
And kind of keep your mind focused, looking around you, walking far. Because a lot of people don't understand that in big cities, and Jay may know this, in big cities, even when I go back home, you know, we walk to the corner, we make wide turns. You don't walk close to a building. Not that that's native to any particular city, but that's true. Chicago, Detroit, New York, LA.
Just street sense, man.
You got to have street sense. So when we come out here, you know, we're in the Midwest now. Yes. And they say it's rough. I mean, what does that mean? But you're in Chicago, so some of that helped you for the city that you're now ministering in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. This is also about God's resourcefulness.
That's right.
Another amazing thing that we need to remember, those of us who are really struggling to know God and to feel His presence if we're going through a hard time. Whatever it is that you're going through, understand, our God is so resourceful, He wastes nothing. So even those experiences that you have had or that you may be having, God is going to use them to His glory and for your salvation.
But you talked about you were going in a different direction, changing the way you lived, kind of learning the texture, the culture of the streets of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But you kind of swung too far to the other side. Talk about that.
I did. Things worked well up to about age 13. I'm actually a charter member of the Brooklyn Faith Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
That is now on Church Avenue on 56th Street.
Yes.
I was a charter member of that church from about age 10, 11, East 52nd Street in a basement when that church was a branch Sabbath school with 8 members. My sister and I and 6 other people basically were the core embryo of that church.
And when you say branch Sabbath school, some of our audience might not know what that is. That's kind of when you just begin a fledgling church and you're meeting to study your Bible together.
Correct.
And you don't really have any established full recognition as an authorized church. Kind of just the nucleus of a church in growth.
Yes, correct. So we're there, and that was based on a promise that my mom made to my grandma. So my grandma, after we migrated to the U.S., my grandma tells my mom, who is at that time was not an Adventist, was a God-fearing person, but not a church-going person. Grandma says to my mom, look, I've raised these children as Seventh-day Adventists, and I'm asking you to do the same. Whether you desire to be convicted in practicing that faith or not, please raise them as Seventh-day Adventists. So my mom starts asking around folk at her work, you know, do you know an Adventist church? Do you know an Adventist? Da, da, da. Somebody say, you know, actually, you live on 52nd Street. There's a sister from Brooklyn Temple that has a little mission over there, da, 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 da. And so my mom starts sending us, you know, just over there. It's just across the street. I wasn't happy, man, because I was enjoying my, you know, I didn't see a television until I came to the U.S., believe it or not. I did not see a television until 1977. So I grew up on radio, like someone in the 40s or the 50s, like full radio. So anyway, I'm here, and Saturday morning cartoons, oh gosh, man, that was my thing.
Scooby-Doo.
And so now here's my mom talking about, Spider-Man and all, and conjunction, function, and even the educational stuff I enjoyed. So my mom is like, you're gonna go to church, you know, you guys, you gotta be kidding me. So, you know, all right, I'm accustomed to it. So we start going to church, and then that little mission transitions into a larger plan, Clarkson Avenue, and then from Clarkson Avenue to Church Avenue. And right about age 13, I remember one morning, I was laying in bed. I had already started to slowly make the transition to the whole street survival thing. Sat up, it was my birthday, 13th birthday, and my mom said, son, it's 9:30, you need to get dressed. And I said, yeah. She came back 15, it's 9:45, you need to get dressed, get up, get ready for church. I said, I'm not going. What do you mean you're not going? I said, I'm not going. She said, son, why? I said, it's my birthday. Well, better reason for you to go and give God praise for, you know, sparing your life to see another year. So I said, Mom, I ask you all the time when you're going to let me make my own decisions. You told me you start letting me make my own decisions when I'm 13 because that will be the beginning of my manhood. I'm 13, I don't want to go.
You thought you were grown at that point.
I don't want to go back to no church, you know. Now, my mom, we had an interesting relationship. My mom was the complete opposite of my grandma. My grandma was, you know, strong on the rod.
The enforcer.
Yeah. My mom was very gentle, soft-spoken, very loving, very patient. And I think my mom was also afraid. She sensed that transition happening. And I think she was afraid if she pushed or bent that, you know, rod too hard, it would break. I would be even more distant than I was. So she didn't want to press it. My mom said, okay, son, I'll give you, tell you what, don't worry about Sabbath school. You don't have to come to Sabbath school. Just get some rest and you know, come at 11 for divine hour. And she started to pull the door, and I said, I'm not coming. And she said, I'll see you in church.
Okay.
And she pulled the bedroom door and she left. Never went back. Never went back within a committed cyclical practice of visiting church every Sabbath. No, I ended up back in church for many other reasons.
Did you have like 1 foot in, 1 foot out?
Well, that's what it was. I had already started carrying a pistol, carrying a knife, 13 already.
Wow.
I had already, well, wasn't smoking or anything like that as yet, but the arm thing started with hanging with the older guys in the neighborhood and trying to gain favor and trust with them. At 13, I looked like 10. At 15, I looked like 12. At 20, I looked like 15. You know, I always had, all this gray hair and everything has changed my appearance, but I always had a baby face. So the older guys on the block, they recognized that and took advantage of it. So whenever we would go anywhere as a group, I would be the one that would tuck the pistol. or tuck the blade or whatever it was.
Because they didn't expect you to get searched.
I wouldn't. And even if I did, I would be out the next day.
Right, because you're a minor.
Yeah.
There were times when I didn't tuck, when I tucked 2. So you can imagine this little kid, you know, got 2 firearms on me at a block party or at a house party or
Well, I
wherever it
heard
was
that
that we
term one
went.
time, block party.
Or it could even be just a park, you know. And then when things would become heated, so to speak, it would be a funny sight to see 2 or 3 guys pulling on my clothing and pouring the language like, yo, shorty, give me that. Yo, shorty, let me hold it. Give me that, you know. And they are trying to retrieve the pistol off of me to go do whatever it is that they have to do. So that transition was already slowly developing. And as Jason asked, it was a mental struggle for me to be sitting in church and you know, all of that. So I stopped.
Because your mind was someplace else. What people don't understand is when you start molding your mind,
Yes.
it's going to take your body in a different direction. The mind
Correct.
controls the body. The body doesn't control the mind. So when you start making intellectual choices, those are also choices that develop you as far as your physical responses, your emotional responses, the way you think about something. Once you start making intellectual decisions, so I'm not going back. Once you start planting that thought in your mind, the body starts getting a different attitude. And you don't miss it because you're thinking all together and you start molding in a different direction and your mind takes that on, your mind takes your body there. So by the time you start to carry a pistol or 2 pistols or a knife, or if I'm understanding here, did you ever get involved in using any kind of drugs or any kind of substances?
Primarily marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah, never really wanted to mess with hard drugs, so to speak. Alcohol is prevalent in our culture,
Right.
in Caribbean culture, South American culture, so alcohol always played a part to some extent. But it was primarily marijuana, and you say Old English 800.
Right.
You
Oh,
guys
yeah.
are embarrassing
Yeah.
me terribly.
No, right. Because back then was the, you know, they used to call it the 40.
The 40.
40 ounce
It was
beer.
it was
You
a
heard that?
40 ounce.
40s,
It was a
they
40 ounce. I don't know if I could say those words on camera.
Sure.
And narcotics. Okay, weed. You know,
Right.
40 ounce and weed.
That's the kind of life you had.
Yes.
That's where the Lord saw you.
Yes, yes. At that point, I'm not doing that independently, though. I'm only doing that like in association with friends.
Right.
So I would go to church periodically by my mom's invitation to appease her, especially if I got in trouble, if I got arrested, or if I got a complaint of some sort. To appease my mom, you know, I would go to church. The other interesting point about this whole experience, as we look at Adventism and we look at church life, there are people who, when they see this, that knew me, they'll be like, no, he made all of that up. I remember him. There's no way all of that could have been going on. And let me tell you, there are dozens of kids, many kids, who are in a Seventh-day Adventist church and culture and are living that kind of double life in the inner city. Because especially if they were nurtured to be courteous and respectful, which I was.
Right.
So it was, I never became rude to adults or elders. I was always still courteous and kind to people who were older than me and respectful to them. But it was this kind of double life that I was living. And
Turn it off, turn it on.
yes,
I can
yes,
identify with that because I
Okay.
was the same way. I was raised to, you know, be Adventist and go to church and all that
Yes.
stuff, but my mind wasn't there. I was
Yes.
1 foot in, 1 foot out for a
Yes.
long time as well.
So when I was in the street, it's almost the best illustration I can give you. It's like being drafted into the military. The
a good way.
streets would be the military. It would be a military enrollment. I
And
have
really
a uniform.
And survival is all a part of it.
Yes, I have a uniform that I put on, that I wore every day that I went out there. Sheepskin coat,
Oh, yeah.
sheepskin hat, whatever, leather hat,
Little
leather
Abners,
bomber,
boots.
certain type pants, Adidas, black and silver Pumas, certain walk, a certain talk. And then as we culturally transition and more West Indians started to migrate to Brooklyn, then of course by the mid-'80s I transitioned to a whole Caribbean culture and lifestyle. Then it was a Rastafarian thing and, you know, those type clothing. And
Now, you have a
all
little bit
that.
of Jamaican background also, don't you?
Guyanese.
Oh, Guyanese.
Yes,
Okay, all
yes,
right.
yes, Guyanese.
So the Rastafarian, because, you know, in Brooklyn, you know, Jamaican culture is very strong.
Very prevalent, yes.
And then all of a sudden you hear the reggae music and Rastafari, all these
Yes,
terms,
yes.
which is kind of like substitutes for Christ. Did you ever get involved in the...
Very much so.
You got involved in that kind of lifestyle?
Very much so. Before Rastafarianism, my first exposure to that type of life was through a group called the 5 Percenters.
I remember that.
And you hear Ivor, Dwayne Lemon, if I'm saying his name correct, you know, those brothers, I hear their testimonies, and I could hear that they also had exposure to all of that also. So I became a 5 Percenter, adopted an Islamic name, and I was searching, you know, until a friend pulled me aside one day and explained to me that he is Muslim. And he said, you know, if you seek in Allah, man, you ain't gonna find him here. You know, if you really want to know about Islam, you know, come to the mosque. You know, my dad will help you to learn. And he started to tell me more about Islam than what I was learning as a 5 Percenter, which basically was the militant right arm of the Nation of Islam.
Right.
So it's alleged that Louis Farrakhan was the one that started the movement and then pull himself out of it and somewhere, whatever. But the 5 Percenters were extremely violent. So it was kind of like a Black Panther movement of the Nation of Islam. And,
So at this point in your life, did you have an emptiness? Were you looking to fill a void at that time? Is that why you were searching? You were looking at drugs, you were looking at, you know, the Nation of Islam, you were looking at the 5 Percenters, you were looking at all these different things. Were you were searching, but were you trying to fill a void?
It was insecurity. If there was, that void was insecurity. That void was, how am I going to survive? And I had been introduced to God, as I said, so I believed in a divine creator to some extent. I believe there was a God that was present in my life. What I couldn't grasp clearly through Adventism were all the fundamentals and the doctrines, and what all of that, or how all of that could help me to be an individual that could survive. So we're dealing with going to church and learning about the Pathfinders, which is something I regret today, but then I strongly resisted. And there were older elders in the church that tried to, you know, kind of guide me in that direction. I remember having conversation with my mom. Look, I can't walk down the street with a suit. I can't be, in my language back then, I can't be walking down the street with a Bible, Ma. I can't be walking down the street with a suit. I can't be walking down the street with no crazy green, yellow looking uniform, man. What is that? No, right. I ain't wearing that, you know, and so on and so forth. And it was this refusal to associate myself with anything religious for the fear of the labeling and what that would cause. It would taint my street reputation that I had now supposedly developed.
But you got soft.
Yes, I would be considered soft. So as Jason was saying, it was this putting on and putting off of that uniform. So when I was home, all that thug talk stuff, I kind of left it out. If I were visiting church, I left it out. Once I got on the number 46 bus, and once I was standing outside my school or wherever, then I was that person again.
The number 46 bus, I remember. The 26 was ours, the 44, the 25.
46. That's funny. It seems like New Yorkers always remember the bus or the subway that they took or that
or PS,
avenue
the school
or
they went to.
That's right. Yep.
But eventually you had to leave New York. Tell us what happened.
Wow.
You moved to Miami.
Yeah, that's a long fast forward. So that happened in the 90s. I was then, let me back up just a little bit so we don't have too large a gap. By 15, 16, I'm heavily into street life. That's high school years. I'm going to a school in Queens because I could not go to Wingate, which was my zone school, and I could not go to Erasmus because of rival gang association, you would say. Interestingly, we didn't have gangs back then. They didn't call them gangs. They called it like a posse. You know, it was just varied neighborhood groups, and we actually went by the number of our street. So you had the 50s posse, the 90s posse, the 40s posse, you know, 21st posse, 31st posse, and all these
Very
groups,
territorial.
Yes, 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 all having to do with control, trade, or trafficking, and you didn't encroach each other's perimeter because you do your trafficking in your area, and so on and so forth. So
And that's drug trafficking,
yes,
to be specific. Yeah.
yes. So I go through all of that, incidents with stabbings, and then one incident that involved the shooting of someone, and I ended up having to go back to South America for my own safety. Again, extended family and other people watching this show, they'd be like, no. I didn't know that's why he went back, but that was the reason.
So this is the tell-all version, the short version.
Yes, yes, indeed. So to avoid prosecution and to avoid being sought after and killed by the rival group, my mom and other family members worked together and got me to return to South America for a year. I didn't kill the person, just to make that clear. I just was involved in that shooting. I'm in South America for almost a year. And then I return about 85. And it did help. You know, while I was there, nothing happened, so to speak, within the environment itself that made me say, well, you know, I don't want to be here. I had great fun, as most kids when they get deported or whatever, you know. I just smoked more weed, drank more alcohol, hung out with Rastafarian cousins, partied, you know, did all of that wonderful stuff. But I had a run-in with a cousin who let me know the value of what I had in the U.S., what I was taking for granted. She was brilliant, and she had scholarships to Romania, scholarship to Russia. She was about maybe 18 at that age. She turned all of them down because she wanted to come to the West. And so she was crying one day, you know, as we were talking. She said, what I would give to have an opportunity, to have the opportunity you've had to go to the U.S., you know, because she wants to study law. And, you know, I was trying to comfort her, and as I was trying to comfort her, say, you know, it'll be all right, you know, things will work out.
Right. I'm
thinking to myself, you know, I'm here, and my main objective right now, my main concern is when I get back to Brooklyn, how I'm gonna find bullets, you know, or how I'm gonna find a bigger pistol, or how I'm gonna find the most lucrative, yet deviant, yet safe means of living. I wanna make money, I wanna establish myself, right? I know it's gonna be something illicit, but I don't want it to be something illicit that's going to kill me.
Right.
So I want to be wise about it, and I'm going through that kind of cunningness, and it said to me, you know, you're wasting your life, man. You know, that's not what you're here for. So when I came back, had a renewed spirit, got into college, and got my first degree, started to work in aviation. First degree was
in New York?
Yes.
Okay.
First degree was in aeronautical engineering at the College of Aeronautics. I think it's called Vaughn College now. I was a bright kid. And then working in aviation, at one point I ended up having to be I had to get out of New York, long story short, because I got tangled up within doing illicit things while in aviation. And it got to the point where there was a federal probe, a friend got shot, he was apprehended in the parking lot by some other group that's part of that trade. They shot him in both his knees and left him on the ground in the parking lot. And then police, looking at that as a strange incident, decided to get a warrant while he was in hospital, questioned him, raided his home, found paraphernalia, found money, and then put pressure on him. So then he started to tell the police the details of who else was involved in whatever, and so on and so forth. Another friend had fled to Jamaica and then called me maybe 3 days later and said, look, this is what's going on, and if you know what's good for you, get out of New York, go back to South America. I'm here in Jamaica, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, I didn't leave the country, but it just so happened transfer was available. So I transferred with my company to Florida.
Okay.
To evade and to get away from all the tension that was building up in Brooklyn at that time, and to save my life.
So when you think about Brooklyn, you think about, wow, that's where I could have ended up. And fast forwarding in the story, because we look at you now, as you said, and you say to yourself, similar to, you know, Jason and myself, I know I survived a lot of the street life in New York, could have been shot, held up at gunpoint more than once, fights with gangs.
Yes.
And we look back at it now on this set and we say, God had another plan.
God is amazing.
Absolutely.
Indeed, indeed.
Thank God he doesn't leave us the way he finds us.
Oh.
No, not at all.
So much could have happened, and the devil wanted to take you out in your sins, and he was trying to keep you in that lifestyle, and he was constantly pulling at you and put you in so many situations where that could have been it.
Absolutely.
Now, in the interest of time, what I want to do, because I know we're going to let our audience know that you can invite Pastor Lowe to give the full version. We kind of leave little gaps in there so people can say, but I want to find out what happened then, kind of activate them to invite you, because we'll let you know at the end of the program how to get in touch with Pastor Lowe, because it's not possible to cover all of his story in one avenue of the program. But you're in Miami now, and you're working there. Tell us about your eventual return to God, and then your marriage. How did the Lord lead there? And then we got to get to the ministry that you have and find out what's going on there.
Sure. By the time I reached Miami, I had a second degree, and I was now working in aviation management. While in Miami, I also got into professional wrongdoing, so to speak. And one incident failed terribly. Almost, and I probably would have still been in jail, God knows. But it fell through, it didn't work. I say today God caused it not to work. And as a result, the person who was at the head of that trade, transaction, whatever, was a good friend of mine from New York that I had actually trained while in New York, how to get into this lifestyle and, how to be most successful in it and so forth, how to I used to ride motorcycles. I taught him how to ride and bought him his first motorcycle and all of his ninja bikes and all the,
I remember that.
The whole fast lane stuff. So he actually turned out to be someone very successful within the narcotic trade. And he pulled me back in once I got down to Miami. And it failed. The effort of trade failed. And he
Praise the Lord.
He said to me, look, I remember the call. He said, Desi, as they call me in the street, Desi, if I didn't know you the way I know you, you'd be dead, because you'd have to put $80,000 in my hand, by this afternoon or else. Wow. So that and a few other skirmishes, I may say, started to turn my head towards Christ. And I had an incident where I lost a friend. She was a partner, actually. She didn't die, but she ended up having severe mental breakdowns and had to be institutionalized for a short period of time. And I remember my first time reaching out to God was in effort for God to reach her. And I remember one night she was like really having it bad and hearing voices in the wall, and she had stripped herself and ran in the streets and and she was succumbing to all of this stress. She was a medical student. She was brilliant also. And I remember her saying, I don't know what to do. And I said, we have to pray. Wow. Because she sensed the devil trying to take her life. And she said, I don't know how to pray. And then I said to her, in my mind, I know how to pray. I don't,
But you've at least heard about it. You've been to church. You have some kind of idea.
And I prayed for her, and saw God act within that whole experience. Then I started to question God's existence. After that, I started asking, well, what happened the other day when I prayed in that? Are you really that intimate in my life? And I challenged God. I remember one morning I was driving to work, and I said, listen, God, I'm confused about all of this stuff. If you are real, if you're more than just a God that created this world, if you're a God that actually desires an intimate relationship, and you know me and you care about what I think and what I do daily, then I was about to ask for some kind of sign. I never even got there. It's like the Holy Spirit grabbed hold of me. Brother, I can't explain it. I know everyone has that experience in life at least once.
The epiphany.
Yes. And I just remember crying. I was on Biscayne Boulevard driving to work, and I was just tears just pouring down my face. This sense of joy, guilt lifted from my heart, because remember, I had all of that past behind me. And it was this sense of through the Holy Spirit, God telling me, you belong to me. I have forgiven you for all those choices you made, all those wrong choices, all those things you did. Go and sin no more. You know, just follow me. And that began the transition. I met my wife shortly after that.
And, good.
I was going to say that, you know, it's such a blessing when you come to the Lord, how you have that true inner peace. You know, the world says they have joy and peace and all this stuff, but the world can't offer you peace. The world doesn't give you peace. The world doesn't give you true joy. But when you come to the Lord, you experience that true inner peace and God forgiving you of your sins.
Yes,
amazing.
amen.
How did you become a pastor?
Met my wife in '93. Once I was baptized into the Adventist Church about that time also.
Okay.
And once let me back up. So I was raised in Adventist, left the church at 13. I think I was baptized at 10.
Okay.
Dr. Clifford Jones, now
Oh, yeah,
president of the Lake Region Conference there, and a former mentor from New York also. But because I left the church and I had been engaged in so many other belief systems, at age 26, I returned to the church through a revival, through that same young lady I was praying for.
Wow.
And it's a complete different experience. The doctrines, the diet, the fundamental culture, for the first time in my life, I could see through all of that. Because I was well familiar with all of that, but it's like all of that, I couldn't clearly see Jesus through it. You know, or I couldn't see his divine love. I couldn't see his grace. I couldn't see his forgiveness. What I could clearly see was structure, a fundamental environment and obedience, but this stuff about his grace, his forgiveness, his mercy, his righteousness, I couldn't clearly see that. So now I'm in the Seventh-day Adventist Church by choice, not because I was raised in this.
Or your grandmother.
Right, and all of that. And what I wanted to do was to, if I had the ability at that time, if someone had said to me, come with me to Timbuktu, you know, come with me to Calcutta, come with me to Bangkok, or come with me to the jungles of Ghana or Brazil, and just live there and dedicate your life to telling people, I would have done it immediately. You know, the opportunity just didn't surface. But what I wanted to do in my heart was to dedicate my life to serving God for all that he had done for me and for all that he had forgiven. I wanted to give back. So I immersed myself into prison ministry, just as I came in the church. Was myself and a wonderful brother by the name of Brother Perrin, God bless his heart, took me under his wing. We went down Miami. We built up homeless feeding programs to feed the poor, fed sometimes in excess of 300-400 people a day downtown Miami. And those are the things that I took joy in. And then going into the prison and the juvenile prisons and so forth, and just sharing with people my own testimony like I'm sharing right now. And
so that opened the door for you to eventually become a pastor later on. How long have you been in ministry now, roughly?
I graduated seminary in 2002, and I started work with Illinois Conference in 2008.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So while in Miami, people would always commend me and say, you really love ministry work. You should become a pastor. I had no desire to be a pastor, but I kept hearing it. And my mom encouraged me to pray about it. And then in '99, I left Florida to start seminary studies.
Wow.
Remember, my prior background was aviation.
Wow. Tell us about your ministry, F-R-E-E-Z. What does that stand for?
Freeze. Well, Freeze is in its embryonic stage.
Okay.
So there's no website currently.
Okay.
As I shared, I pastor a 4-church district. I have 4 churches, and I am new to that 4-church district. This is my 2nd year.
Okay.
So I'm still in the developing process as far as church leadership. And you as a pastor, you understand, you come into a new church, there are things that you have to address, as we call in-reach, and you have to deal with the needs of the congregation. So I'm still very much immersed in in-reach work within my churches. However, what I have envisioned as soon as that balances out is establishing and building on this ministry. FREEZE, the acronym is Friends,
Okay.
Reaching Out, Embracing, Empowering Generation Z.
Oh,
The Z generation. So for familiarizing myself more and more with different facets of the community, the basketball leagues I really love.
right.
And one of my churches, I have an elder, two of my churches, I have elders that are leaders within the leagues. And it's just amazing to go out and see these kids involved. And you know, these are kids that are not church-going, many of them, but they join with church-going kids to participate in the league, and they're witnessed to. And through that relationship, some of them do come into the church. But there are other facets that I'm looking at also as I get the time to, working with law enforcement primarily, and working with anti-gang units, and building relationship with youth within the impoverished community, those who are at risk, because that's also what I did for 15 years, working with the state of Michigan. So I hope to build that into a full-blown ministry.
Which is
near
great.
future.
That's great, because you're pouring into the community. You know, it sounds to me like if your church was gone or if your ministry was gone, they would notice. You know, your community would notice.
Should be.
And that's how it should be.
It should be.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly how it should be.
Is there an age limit for the basketball team?
Oh, no.
Bring
No,
Jason, we'll go for
listen.
you.
Yep.
I am not a baller, right? Let me confess. When I was growing up in Brooklyn, I got it because I was short, as I said. And you have some short guys that are skilled, but most of them are not. And so I got frustrated. And I would just like kick the ball and then go on the side with the guys who were throwing dice while other guys were playing ball or whatever. You know,
CeeLo and all that.
Yeah, so I didn't have patience.
Well, the Lord brought you through a lot.
I didn't have patience for playing basketball. But anyway, I saw some kids. We had the league playoff in central Chicago there 2 weeks ago. And as young as I saw this one kid, he was about 8 years old. And it was just amazing to see how this kid was moving on the court. Yeah, I think one of them was at least 5 or 6. So no, you start early all the way up to collegiate age. It's an awesome experience. I encourage anyone in an urban community that's part of a church that's not connected to a league, try to connect to one.
What I want to point out for those who may be in an urban environment, and what Pastor Lowe is talking about, is that was what kept the church together in Brooklyn, in Bethel, where I went to. We connected with the community through sports, through basketball. And in some churches, depending on where you are, some people might say, well, you know, that's competitive sports. We saw it as ministry. Because these young people are going to be in the local community center, they're going to be in the gym, and the community centers opened up to keep them off the streets.
Yes.
So when we established programs, we had a parameter at our church at Bethel. You know, if you were not a member of the church, you had to come to church a certain amount of times to be on the team. So the guys that were not Adventists, were not attending church, they had to be there, else they didn't play on the team.
Yep.
And so that's kind of one of the outreaches of friends, reaching out, empowering,
embracing, empowering
the Generation Z.
Yep.
So
law enforcement, as I said, is the other complement. I had that opportunity in Miami to work with law enforcement. There are a lot of police officers that want to help churches. They see the value in it, even those who are not church-going. They do see the value in it. And getting them involved and getting them to be active in reaching out to the children in your community is an asset, and getting them to build that relationship. You recognize the term FREEZE. You know,
right.
That's we inner city kids, when we hear that, that's something bad. As a cop pointing a gun at you. But this is FREEZE for the right purpose, for the right route.
I like that, because somebody says freeze, in your sense it means stop in your tracks and go in a different direction.
Let me get you.
Because in the inner city, the word freeze is a word you don't want to hear.
Right.
Especially young black men.
Yes.
And but if you look back on your life, and I know that you probably caught this, is all the things you went through in New York. The Lord brought you out of pretty much a Garden of Eden setting. Not that Guyana was perfect, but brought you out of a very laid back community.
Yes.
Planted you right in the middle of a city that honed your mind to now deal with where you're living.
Yes.
See, so you know and understand the culture in the big cities. Chicago is a very challenging city. Is that an understatement?
Oh, no.
Not at all.
So on your day-by-day basis, because I know up in Chicago, I mean, when we went to church in the cities, we locked the doors of our car. You know, the church was locked. The sound system was locked. You know, everything in the church was on a lock.
Yes.
How is it in the city now? In ministry, is it still challenging?
3 of my churches are in an a suburban setting.
Okay.
One is in an urban setting. That's the New Heights Church in Markham. But I recall I did my internship at Shiloh, and while working at Shiloh as a seminary pastor, going door to door within that community, Michigan Avenue, you know, that whole area there.
Oh yeah.
And when I would greet residents, and they open their door and start to talk to them. They say, where you say you from? So, such and such and such in the Shiloh Church. You came out here by yourself? How you got up here? I said, yeah, I came all the way up here. You know, somebody on the 8th, 10th floor, whatever, you know. Nobody ain't stopped them. No. You ain't scared? No.
You came out of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's second nature. It was second nature. Working for the state in Michigan, I had clients that would tell me, you know, Mr. Lowe, don't come around here at 9 o'clock. You know, don't come around here after the sun sets. You know, I would still show up. I need you to sign this. You know, we need to talk about this. You got a court date. You don't know. I need to let you know. You know, whatever.
Right.
And they would always react with surprise. But once again, I have no anxiety for going anywhere.
That's an amazing story. You know, there are those of you watching the program and listening that may want to get in touch with Pastor Lowe. And at this following email address, deslo@sbcglobal.net. That's deslo@sbcglobal.net. Send him an email there and invite him to your church or your community, because his story is much larger than we can cover in a short time here on the program. And I'm looking forward to hearing the expanded version, maybe at pastors' meetings, or have you come down and share our story, or maybe invite us up so we can look and see what it's like there in the city where God has called you to minister. We're going to take a short news break, and after that we'll come back with a few closing thoughts. Well, as you know, our program time comes and goes so quickly. That's an interesting program. What do you think?
Very much so, and I'm going to be disappointed if you tell him the story at a pastor's meeting, because I can't go to that.
All right, well, I'll come tell you, Jason.
All right.
But Paul or Pastor Lowe, your audience is listening. By television, by radio, they're listening. What made a difference in your life?
What made a difference was God's providence, but through my mother. And I want to stress, don't stop praying for kids or anybody that you deem at risk, that you deem far from God. Because through all of this, as I said, I wasn't really praying. I would pray in incidents of urgencies. You know, I'm on the ground, I'm called up and the bullets are flying. And then in some cases, even after the shooting stopped, and I get up, the person right next to me was hit. One occasion, wiping that person's blood off my own body. Those are the times that I would pray. But outside of that, I didn't really have a prayer life, but my mom did. My mother had a consistent daily prayer life for me, and she had other people praying for me also. She had the church praying for me also, even though I wasn't there. The other thing is, don't assume because and this has to do with the value of mentorship and nurture and praying for our youth. Don't assume by appearance. This kid could be teaching Sabbath school, could be singing in the choir, could have the most boyish appearance and all the things that I had, and still be out there in all kind of stuff. There were other kids I knew like myself that were in church that had that same lifestyle, did not make it.
Wow.
Did not make it.
Wow.
Right? So I was fortunate in that sense by God's mercy that he preserved me for some reason.
Well, Paul, Pastor Lowe, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We know God has a plan for your life, for my life, and for your life. And thank you so much for tuning into the program. We know that the Lord has a future and a hope for every one of us. Listen for his voice, because one day you'll meet him face to face. And what better way than to get to know him today? God bless you until we see you again.